Okay, so 12th of December has gone through, and we have what is called on some sites Brexmas. I think that's a bloody marvellous expression. Brexmas just about sums it up, doesn't it? Because it was an election that was not really about party political ideas or ideology. It came down really to whether um, people were going to get their 2016 referendum vote listened to. Um, Whether you like Boris or not, I don't think he's that great a guy, to be quite honest. But compared to Marxism and, shall we say, ignoring the people like Swinson and Corbyn, um, what else could you do? There was nobody else. You couldn't have Farage in because that would be a bloody disaster. He may have helped to get Brexit onto the table in the past, but I think Farage made a bit of a silly mistake, really, because okay, UKIP was dead. You know, people had got fed up with the idea of UKIP, so he starts up Brexit, which was a great idea. He's a great talker. He's like Rees-Mogg and the rest. He's got oratory skill, but the problem is that I think he got too convinced of his own kingship in a way. Um, he helped bring about Brexit, and then he thought he could command it. Boris wasn't going to listen to him. Boris said, "No, Boris, we want a deal. We want to do something. But if no deal, if the deals are not agreed, then we will do no deal." But Farage took it too far. I think when Farage started arguing that we had to have no deal, and the election comes up, and he starts saying, "Well, Boris's deal is not good, and it should be put aside," I think he cut his own throat, because then people said, "Well, we've had 3.5 years of absolute comedy show from a wishy-washy parliament that can't decide whether it wants to have a shit or a shower," and he just fell into that trap that I think the British people said, "Sod it. Maybe we don't like Boris, but at least he's going to bloody well do something and close it all off." He promises January 31 that Britain's going to be out, the UK is going to be out of the EU. People have listened to that. Whether you like his, shall we say, tricks and cons in the past is I think, it's a politician, isn't it? Come on. You know, I think there's the age-old joke of, oh, bloody Harold Wilson, "I'd be perfectly frank and honest, I'm now going to tell a lie." So, you know, politicians, aren't they? You know, they'll tell you black is white to get into the bloody seat, and then when they get in, black is black and white is white. So that's it. Corbyn, well, let's be quite honest. McCluskey has had Corbyn dancing to his tune ever since he became leader of the bloody Labour Party. So it's been a union tussle all the way along. He's got idiots sitting in his shadow cabinet who just, sometimes they can't even seem to put two words together, let alone anything else. So yeah, really, Corbyn cut his own throat because he's a Marxist. He was a serious agitator in CND. He's been on all sorts of marches. He met with the IRA. He met with Hezbollah. He's really bucked the system, and I don't think the British people are stupid enough to want to go back to the old days of the left-wing Labour socialism. It left the UK in a terrible state. Much as you don't like Maggie, at least Maggie picked it up and brought it back into a better economy and everything. Okay, she destroyed a lot of things, but at the end of the day, the destruction was already on the wall, because the unions and the left-wing Marxist Labourites, the socialists, had basically started the ball rolling. It was difficult to stop. But we don't, I don't think the British public are stupid enough to want to go back to the left-wing Labourite days again. Of course, dear old Jo Swinson. Well, come on, girl. What dream world did you grow up in? You sit there having watched the Daft Coalition with Cameron, with your guy as Deputy Prime Minister, and you actually put forward legislation and things that really showed the Lib Dems as a weak, wishy-washy bunch of Burks. So you have that legacy, and secondly, to actually disregard the 2016 referendum of 17.4 million and say that Brexit and Article 50 should be immediately cancelled, and that you are the only sensible person for PM. Oh, come on, the Lib Dem party has been the, shall we say, the escape route for all the has-beens and people who throw their toys out the prams of every other party. So, the Lib Dems really are not a strong contender for anything, to be quite honest. I don't think anybody trusts the Lib Dems to actually follow a strict path. Okay, with Boris, what are we going to get? Now that Boris has a majority, I don't think his bluster and his shouting and his stamping his feet and all the rest will continue. I think he'll actually, he'll take a milder route. I got a feeling that Boris, okay, he is a capitalist and everything, but he is a Tory. But I think that he'll probably take a milder, more centre of right route, because he said in his speech he realises that he's taken a lot of Labour Leave people, Labour Brexit people, and he's taken their seats. Basically because Labour wouldn't commit itself to one way or the other, and those areas had already said they want Brexit, so he was really the only sensible option, or the only option for them, and he realises that, and he said that plainly in his acceptance speech of the election result, that he realises it, he appreciates it, and he must now show those people who've changed from Labour to him that he's worth their vote. And I think he will. There's enough people around him, I think, that will try to curb some of his extreme views. I think he's got enough advisors, and with the majority now, I think he will actually, sorry, I've got another computer that's on bloody update, Windows 10 update. Isn't that ridiculous? A bit like Brexit, really, isn't it? In the Parliament. But anyway, I think Boris will calm a little bit. I think the storm is abating now. He's got what he wanted. He's got his January 31st. The EU has already started to say that they have ideas on the table, such as a trade deal. Merkel has made it quite plain that she does not want to lose the connection with the UK. Of course she bloody doesn't. Merkel's in financial difficulties, mate. Germany's not as great on the finance as people seem to think. You only got to look at their military and how they failed to keep their military up. They haven't got the money they everybody talks about. And of course Merkel is up against Macron. Macron is an empire builder. He's a bit like the old de Gaulle, I think he wants to put France right at the head of everything. But that ain't going to happen, because 21% of the EU budget is going down the toilet, because Boris ain't going to give it. So that will put quite a mocker on the old EU budget and the way the EU works. So I think Boris I think he's sensible enough to realise that he needs to work with the EU. He needs to work with the rest of the world. India, Australia, all these places have all come out and praised Boris for getting the election. There's a lot of support coming in, and I think deals are coming across the table. The EU said that they have a deal that they want to make with the UK. The UK wants to make a deal. There's so much that the UK is important to them in terms of military security technology. It may not be the big import-export, cross products as some people talk about. Of course, the EU sells more to the UK than the UK sells to the EU. We all know that. We're not stupid. But when it comes to the expertise and technology and the military might of the UK, some people laugh at that, but believe it, the UK is still recognised as a military machine and not to be argued with. And the EU recognises that fact as well. So they don't want to lose that. They don't want to lose the technology. Things like the Galileo satellite system. A lot of that is down to British techno. And when the EU said, oh, if you do Brexit, we're not going to allow you access to the military side and the security system side of Galileo, the Brits just turned around and said, okay, fine, we'll just set up our own system. We've got enough techno that we put into Galileo that we'll just withdraw, and all we got to do is add to that. We got our own bloody system, so do what you want. It went very quiet. The military, of course, Rheinmetall is into our tank systems and heavy artillery systems. So there's a lot that really the EU would not want to give up. So the special relationship of the UK with the US and so on, ignore dear old bloody Donald Trump. Oh dear, oh dear. If you want to have a picture of an idiot, well, a businessman trying to be a politician, a failed businessman as well, by the way. But there is still a special relationship, and that is worth a hell of a lot, because despite Macron and all the rest moaning about NATO and trying to put forward the European Defence Force, NATO, the US and the UK are a very, very important factor for the EU, regardless of whether Russia is a threat or not. I live in the Baltics, ex-Russian occupied states, and I can tell you now that there's a lot of paranoia and bullshit about what Russia does. Russia's doing no different basically around here than they've done over the last 100 years. So, but it's paranoia to feed the likes of the Americans and so on to think that they're protecting these states. Well, Russia has no wish to take over states that have fallen apart. They have no structure left here for them. So Russia's replaced all that. Russia has the ports. It has all the infrastructure and everything built. That it's got no need of the Baltic states. It's rubbish. But anyway, the EU is going to have a difficult time from now, isn't it? The UK's, I think it's the fourth largest or maybe third largest contributor to the EU budget. Actually, I think it's the second. But I'd have to check up on that. But it's a very large contribution. It's actually equal. That's right. It's equal to 21 other states of the EU. Its financial contribution to the EU, I'll repeat that, the UK's financial contribution to the EU is equal to 21 other states of the EU. That is a hell of a lot. The UK has had a net negative return in terms of finance from the funds. Okay, it's benefited in terms of cross border techno and all the you know the factories and stuff, but in terms of pure money, the UK has had a pretty bad deal. So, and then you take France, which, you know, basically France, well, you know, it gets far more money out of the EU than the UK does because it needs it, you know. So, but at the end of the day, the UK will survive. It will have a tricky 5, maybe 10 years of climbing back, but it will survive. It will have connections with the EU. It will still have its US connections. It has connections with China. It has connections with all the other Commonwealth countries as well. So the UK, I think, is set to have a hard time for maybe 10 years, but then it will climb out, pull up its straps, and it will be back on the world stage again. I'm just glad to see that the Comedy Act of Parliament is over. Well, I hope so anyway. Obviously there's going to be some shouting and screaming from SNP, and the DUP ain't going to be very happy because they no longer can hold the Tories to ransom for their 10 votes or whatever it is. The DUP has lost ground in Northern Ireland as well, and that's no surprise. Sinn Féin, of course, has gained, which is going to put pressure on the devolution side of Northern Ireland and with the Republic. But still, the main aspect now, obviously, for the UK is to stay as the UK. Dear old Sturgeon is obviously going to take the support she's had in the election and call that support for the Indy Ref too. Personally, I don't think the vote for the SNP is particularly for Indy Ref 2. I think the vote for the SNP is because no other party in Scotland was advocating remain in the EU. All the other parties were basically either leave or sitting on a fence. The SNP was the only one that actually really stood up and said, okay, there was the Lib Dems, but, you know, come on, the Lib Dems are nothing in Scotland, they really ain't, you know, and Swinson has found that out for the second time, right? So the SNP, I think, are riding on a tide of anti-Brexit, not on a tide of Indy Ref 2, but because of the anti-Brexit feeling in Scotland, if Boris does allow an Indy Ref 2, it is possible that Scotland would vote for independence based on that EU anti-Brexit stand. It will be a very, very sad day because I don't believe Scotland can survive without the EU or remaining as part of the UK. And why do I say that? I'm in the petrochemical industry and have been for many years. If you go up into Scotland, the so-called bonanza of North Sea oil and so on ended years ago. It's no good Sturgeon and all these people standing up and saying, hey, Scotland is, you know, industrious, it's engineering, it's this, it's that. Hey, girl, today rigs and support vessels and everything are all tied up in the locks. They ain't working. You can go up into Scottish locks and you can buy a rig, support vessels and all the rest for peanuts, literally. They're crying out for people to buy or rent them to take them to other parts of the world. They're clogging up rivers and locks. They ain't working. The fishing ports are empty. They're ghost towns. hopefully the UK leaving the EU, if the fisheries policy can be broken, maybe fishing will become a good industry again in Scotland. I hope so. I hope so. But Nicola, you know, pull your knickers up, girl. Read the truth of what you really have. Scotland is a great place. I love Scotland. I don't want to see Scotland leave the UK. I don't want to see Northern Ireland leave the UK. I don't want to see Wales leave the UK. The UK is a fantastic union that has stood the test of time. It's shown the world how states can work together. You know, you go across to America and everybody holds up the United States of America as, hey, the land of freedom and all the rest. Actually, the individual states hate each other, literally. You know, they have a union on a flag, but when it comes to taxes and all the rest, they all argue with each other. You know, they can't even decide. You know, who's it's. But the United Kingdom has shown how it can be, and I just hope that the UK survives the Brexit, that we can pull the country back together again. It can show the world how it can be done. It's a great future if people will actually sit down and say, hey, it's done, dusted. No matter what we think, it's there. That is the situation. We now have to work with it. I've been a lifelong Tory. I agree. Yes, I was a supporter of Maggie until the latter years. Then she had to go. She thought she was a dictator. She could do whatever she wanted. But in the early years, she really pulled this country up out of the mire, out of the mess. But she stayed in too long, and she had to go. I just hope that Boris doesn't make the same mistake. He's got to pull the UK up. He's got to pull it together. He's got to make it work. And then he's got to be man enough to actually say, I've done my job. Now it's time to let somebody else in. And don't do a Maggie. Don't do a Blair. I'm quietly confident to see the UK back as a world leader, back on the stage. It's the future. The world is such a crap place at the moment. Political correctness gone wild. Sorry to say it, but I respect LGTB or whatever you call yourselves. You know, I respect all this. You know, everybody has a belief, has a view, and all the rest. I respect all that. But please, you know, can we get back to normality? Can we get back to reasonable attitude, honest opinion, honest talk, honest conversation, honest everything? Get rid of all this transgenderization and 110 or 120 genders and all, you know, get rid of all this rubbish. Just get back to life. If you want to change, if you want to be called something, fair enough, but don't tell me to change. I am what I term a normal, reasonable, honest human being. That's it. I don't want to be classed as hypocrite, anti this, anti that. I'm not. I've got gay friends. I've got female friends. I've got male friends. I got socialist friends. I got Muslim friends. I've got, you know, Buddhist friends. I got them all. I work all over the world. And I feel I have a pretty reasonable attitude to everybody. but tread on me or tell me what I must do, and you'll find I'll tell you to get stuffed. It's simple as that. I'll listen to your arguments, but if you try to push me to your view without appreciating mine, get stuffed. All right? So I'm a reasonable person. I just believe in live and let live, and I don't force my view onto others. I respect other people's views. I respect that way other people want to live. I have two things in life. Don't be cruel to children. Don't be cruel to animals. Plus, be true to yourself, because then you're true to others. It's as simple as that. Alright? It's actually three things, isn't it? Don't be cruel to children. Don't be cruel to animals. And be true to yourself, which makes you true to others. There's an old saying that I was given by a close older friend who's sadly passed on. And they said, we are on this world, holding the world in readiness for our children. And I think that just about sums it up. What we do is the legacy we leave for those who follow behind us. Thank you very much. I know some people are not going to agree with me. That's fair enough. That's up to you. So I wish everybody a bloody good Christmas. A Brexmas. Good Christmas. Happy New Year. And, well, that's it. Let's look forward to the future and hope not so many wars, not so many conflicts. Let's see if we can try to start living in peace. So, good life, all the best, and maybe I'll speak to you again after Brexit. I think let's have a good one then. All right, cheers.